The storm howled across the highway, like the world itself was grieving. Wipers squealed against the glass, smearing water that refused to be cleared. Damian Wells gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, eyes burning with exhaustion from yet another double shift. He'd been living off coffee and adrenaline, doing whatever it took to keep his daughter, Amelia, out of foster care. 3 weeks. That's all he had before the trial. 3 weeks before the world decided whether he was a thief or a father. The red circle on the kitchen calendar haunted him every morning, every night. The number of days shrinking like the air in his lungs. He should have been home hours ago. Amelia would be asleep at Mrs. Marin's by now, clutching her stuffed rabbit, waiting for him to whisper their nightly promise. Always together, no matter what. A flash of hazard lights caught his attention through the rain. Small, desperate blinks breaking through the dark. A luxury car was pulled onto the shoulder, gleaming faintly under the streetlight. Someone stood beside it. The silhouette of a woman holding her phone to her ear, drenched from head to toe. He should have driven past. He wanted to. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't his problem. She had money. She had insurance. Someone like her would have help in minutes. But his foot eased off the gas. The figure's shoulders shook, not from the rain, but from something else. Frustration? Fear? His mother's voice echoed in his head, a memory that still hurt. Character isn't what you show when life is easy, Damian. It's what you do when all falls apart. Everything was falling apart. He slowed to a stop behind the red car. For a moment, he just sat there, rain hammering the roof, debating whether this was stupid or suicidal. Then, with a heavy breath, he stepped out into the downpour. The rain hit him like a wall. Within seconds, he was soaked. He raised a hand so the woman could see he meant no harm, his movements slow and deliberate. "Ma'am," he called out over the wind. "You okay? Car trouble?" She spun around, eyes wide. Fear flickered there, reasonable fear. A strange man, late at night, in the middle of a storm. "It just died," she said after a pause, her voice steady but weary. "Won't turn over at all. Mind if I take a look? I'm not a mechanic, but I fixed enough old cars to know my way around an engine." Another hesitant pause, then a nod. "Please. I'd appreciate it." The hood popped open, and Damian leaned in. The smell of rain and metal filled the air. His fingers traced along the battery line, the wires, until he found the problem. "Loose terminal," he shouted over the storm. "Probably shook loose when you hit a pothole. You got any tools?" She shook her head. "No." "Hang on." He jogged back to his old sedan, grabbed his battered toolkit from the trunk, and returned, his breath misting in the cold air. Working quickly, he tightened the connection, wiping corrosion away with an old rag. "This battery's almost dead," he said, voice calm despite his trembling hands. "You'll want to replace it soon. There's a gas station a couple miles up." She nodded, watching him closely. Even through the rain, he could see something commanding about her presence, professional, self-assured, like she was used to being listened to. "Try it now," he said, stepping back. She slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Her face lit up with relief, transforming in that instant. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching for her purse. "Nothing," Damian said, backing toward his car. "Just glad I could help." "Wait. At least tell me your name." He turned, rain streaking down his face. Damian Wells." She smiled faintly, warmth cutting through the cold. "Thank you, Damian Wells. You might have just saved my night." He gave a small nod and got back into his car, heart heavier than before. If only she knew. If only she knew she'd just been helped by a man the world thought was a criminal. 3 weeks later, Damian sat in Hartford County Criminal Court, wearing a borrowed suit that didn't fit. His palms were slick with sweat. His whole body trembled. This was it, the moment that would decide his life, and Amelia's. All rise for the Honorable Judge Kendall Ross. The bailiff called. Damian stood, barely breathing. He didn't look up at first. Couldn't. But something, instinct maybe, made him glance toward the bench. And his heart stopped. It was her, the woman from the storm, the one he'd helped on that dark road. No, it couldn't be. His mind was playing tricks on him. But the more he looked, the more certain he became. The same eyes, the same posture, the same quiet authority. Judge Ross sat perfectly composed, scanning her papers, giving no sign of recognition. The trial began. Words blurred together. Embezzlement, falsified records, evidence, intent. Damien heard none of it. He just stared at her, trying to tell himself he was imagining it. Then came the moment that changed everything. The prosecutor presented photocopied financial documents. Judge Ross frowned. "Mr. Davis, these are photocopies," she said sharply. "Where the originals?" The prosecutor stammered. "Your Honor, the originals were misplaced. This court will not proceed on secondary copies. I'm granting the defense motion for a forensic audit. We will reconvene when the documents are authenticated." Her gavel came down hard. Damien flinched. Mr. Flores, his public defender, looked stunned. "That's rare," he whispered. "We just got a lifeline." But Damien wasn't listening. He stared at Judge Ross as she stood and disappeared into her chambers. If it was her, and he was sure now, it meant she just risked her reputation for him. And she didn't even know if he was innocent. Judge Kendall Ross leaned against her chamber door, shaking. Her pulse thundered. It was him, Damien Wells, the man who'd stopped to help her in the rain when she was stranded, terrified, and alone. The moment she'd seen his name on the docket, her stomach had dropped. She wanted to recuse herself instantly. But then she'd read the case files, the sloppy evidence, the missing originals, the forged signatures, and realized something wasn't right. If she stepped aside, the case would go to Judge Patterson, the same man who boasted a 94% conviction rate and never granted defense motions. So she hadn't recused herself. She'd done the unthinkable. She'd stayed. She bent every rule to make sure justice was actually served, and she prayed she was right. 2 weeks later, Damien's phone buzzed while he was stacking boxes at the warehouse. "Damien," Mr. Flores said breathlessly. "The forensic report came back. Gregory Phillips forged everything. You're cleared. The court's reconvening tomorrow." Damien sank to his knees right there between pallets of cardboard, tears mixed with dust on his cheeks. The next morning, Judge Ross's voice was calm, resolute. After reviewing the authenticated documents, it is clear that Gregory Phillips, not Damien Wells, committed the embezzlement. All charges are dismissed with prejudice. The room erupted, but Damien heard nothing except her words. He looked up at the bench, and for a heartbeat, their eyes met. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just a flicker, recognition, relief, something unspoken, and then she was gone. He left the courtroom free but aching, knowing he owed his life to the woman he'd once helped in the rain. And somehow, he had to find a way to thank her. 6 weeks passed. Life was almost normal again. He had a steady job at the hardware store now, was home every night for dinner. Amelia's drawings of Daddy being free covered the fridge. But one day, as he stocked shelves, a familiar voice said behind him, "Excuse me, do you know where I can find battery terminals?" He froze. He turned, and there she was, Judge Ross, or rather, Kendall, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, smiling. "It's you," he breathed. "I knew it was you." Her smile deepened. "You recognize me." "How could I not? You were the only one who believed in me." "I had my suspicions the moment I saw your name," she admitted. "But if I'd said anything, I would have had to step aside. And Judge Patterson would have sent me to prison," he said quietly. Kendall's eyes softened. "Maybe, but I couldn't watch an innocent man be destroyed when I knew the truth was right there." "Why?" Damien asked. "Why risk your career for me?" "Because I saw who you really are," she said softly. "A man who stops in the rain to help a stranger without asking for anything in return. That night told me everything I needed to know about your character." He felt his throat tighten. "You saved my life." "You saved mine first," she whispered. "You reminded me that goodness still exists." Damien laughed quietly, eyes wet. "I never even knew your name that night." "I know," she said. "You gave me yours." "I didn't realize until later what a mistake that was." "Would things have been different if you had?" "Maybe," she said, smiling faintly. But maybe it happened exactly as it needed to. Then she added softly, "Your daughter, Amelia, she gave me a drawing during the trial. A judge with a superhero cape." He laughed. "She thinks your gavel is magic." Kendall's smile warmed. "Well, maybe it is. It saved the right person, didn't it?" He looked at her for a long moment, the hum of the store fading around them. "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Not as a judge and defendant. Just two people who've been through a storm." Her eyes glimmered. "I'd really like that." The soft chime of the cafe door cut through the gentle hum of morning chatter. Damien held it open, motioning for Kendall to enter first. The smell of roasted beans and rain-wet pavement filled the air, familiar, grounding. It had been nearly 2 months since the trial, but seeing her now, outside the courtroom and without the heavy shadow of duty, felt almost surreal. She looked lighter. "Still raining," she said, glancing out the window as they settled into a booth. "Fitting, don't you think?" He smiled faintly. Full circle. They ordered coffee, black for him, cappuccino for her, and for a while, they just sat in the quiet, letting the storm speak for them. "I want to say thank you," Damien began finally, his voice low. "I know you probably hear that a lot, but you didn't just save me. You gave Amelia her dad back." Kendall's fingers traced the rim of her cup. "I didn't save you, Damien. I did my job. The truth saved you. You just needed someone to make sure it was seen." He shook his head gently. "No, you went against the grain. You saw what others refused to. That takes courage." She met his gaze, the weight of his sincerity settling between them. "You think I was brave?" "I was terrified. If I was wrong, I could have lost everything." "But you weren't wrong," he said quietly. "And that's what matters." Kendall smiled then, soft, genuine, unguarded. "You know, most people never call me by my first name." He chuckled. "Guess I'm not most people." "No," she said. "You never were." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, full of unspoken gratitude, and something deeper neither of them dared name yet. When they parted, she gave him her number. "In case your car breaks down," she teased lightly. He grinned. "I'll try to time it with another storm." Over the next few weeks, storms came and went. And with each one, so did their distance. They began meeting after work, sharing stories that had been bottled up for years. Kendall told him about her late husband, a pilot lost to a crash 3 years ago, and how she'd buried herself in work to avoid the grief. Damien told her about Amelia's mother, who had walked out before their daughter turned 2, and how every choice he'd made since had been for that little girl. They laughed, sometimes until they cried. Other times, they sat in silence, understanding that healing didn't always need words. One evening, after tucking Amelia into bed, Damien opened his phone to find a message from Kendall. "You once told me you believed everything happens for a reason. I think I finally understand what mine was." By spring, they were inseparable. Amelia adored Kendall. She would run into her arms the moment she appeared at the door, proudly showing her new drawings and calling her Miss K. One Sunday morning, as the three of them painted birdhouses in the backyard, Amelia's brush slipped, splattering blue paint on Damien's shirt. Kendall laughed. "You've been marked, counselor." "Guess that's better than a life sentence," he quipped, and she shook her head, smiling. But then Amelia piped up innocently. "Daddy, can Miss K stay forever?" Kendall froze. Damien looked at his daughter, heart twisting. "Maybe one day, sweetheart," he said softly. Their eyes met, 1,000 emotions passing between them in that moment. That one day came sooner than either expected. It was late summer. The air buzzed with heat and the hum of crickets. They'd gone for a drive out past the city limits, ending up at a quiet overlook where the valley stretched beneath a blanket of twilight. Damien pulled something from his pocket. Small, wrapped in a handkerchief. Kendall's breath caught. "Damien," he smiled, nervous but certain. "I didn't plan on this tonight. I was going to wait until Amelia's birthday next week. But I can't." He unfolded the cloth, revealing a simple silver ring, modest but beautiful. "When I met you," he began, "I thought life was done teaching me about grace. Then you walked into that courtroom, the same woman I helped in the rain, and you reminded me that fate doesn't always punish. Sometimes it gives second chances. Kendall's eyes glistened. You saw me when the world saw a criminal, he said. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And because of that, I have my life back. I have my daughter. And I have hope. So, Judge Ross, Kendall, will you do me the honor of being part of our story? Will you marry me? Tears blurred her vision. She nodded, voice trembling. Yes, Damien. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and as thunder rolled in the distance, she whispered with a smile, always full circle. He laughed. Guess storms are our thing. The wedding was small but beautiful, a garden ceremony beneath soft string lights. Amelia walked down the aisle scattering petals, her face glowing with joy. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Amelia giggled and clapped, shouting, "Yay! My family's complete." And just like that, the rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing, perfect. Kendall looked up at the sky, laughing through tears. Every time, huh? Damien wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Maybe it's just the world blessing us again. She rested her head on his chest, or reminding us where it all began. He kissed her forehead. The night I stopped for a stranger. She smiled. The night I met the man who changed everything. Years later, Amelia would tell her friends that her parents' love story started in a thunderstorm, with a broken car, a helping hand, and a little faith in the goodness of people. And every time it rained, Damien and Kendall would step out onto the porch, coffee in hand, watch the sky weep silver and smile. Because for them, storms would never mean chaos again. They would always mean home.